Hi everyone, this is Leslie Stretch from Medallia. I'm really delighted to be here today with our friends from State Farm, Mahesh Chandrappa and Laurel Straub. Thanks for joining me here. It's great to have you with us and this super venue. State Farm, Laurel, became a customer of Medallia 4 years ago now, 2018. So I'd love to hear what it's been like and what your goals were at the outset and how things have evolved in the last 4 years.
Sure. So our goals at the outset were, I would say, really similar to the same goals we've had for 100 years, right? Because we had our 100th anniversary this year in June.
Congrats. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. And our goals have really always been to try to deeply understand the needs of our customers, the expectations that our customers have. At the same time, we have always understood the importance of really understanding kind of the mindsets and behaviors of our agency force and of our employees. And what we were looking for 4 years ago, knowing that that's always been really important to us, was a way to start to improve the means by which we collected the feedback from those really important groups, right? Especially in a super competitive environment like ours. Since that time, and since our partnership with Medallia, I'd say we've really been accomplished a great deal. So we now have deployed over 100 surveys. We've received over millions of responses now from our customers, from our agents, from our employees. And what it's really enabled us to do, I'd say, is probably three things. One, we've been able to, I think, better aggregate the feedback that we collect to kind of understand where are those pain points, where are those issues and things we really need to try to focus on fixing in our operation and in our digital capabilities. Second, it's really enabled us to have and improve our top-line measures of customer experience, much more robust, overarching enterprise customer experience. But I think the third thing is probably the most important, and that's that we've really been able to get the feedback of our customers into the hands of the individual associate. So people who are delivering that touch point and that interaction directly to our customer, now instead of getting just a report that says, oh, your contact center's overall survey results say this, people can see the immediate impact that they've had on the experience of a customer. And when it was good, they can get kind of the attaboy pat on the back. And when it was not so good, we have opportunities to coach and to even do service recovery and reach out and make that a better experience.
Cool, fantastic. Okay, Mahesh, it's a bit of an understatement, but quite a lot's changed since we started working together. What are some of the key changes that you've experienced, and how have you adapted to those changes? And I'm very mindful this is a 4-year relationship, and this is your 100th year in business.
So, Leslie, first of all, thank you for having us here today, and also thank you for your team to be a part of the journey our journey for the past 4 years, and I wish to have more years to come. With that, I think you mentioned about the 100th year, and change, adaptation, and innovation has been at the core of State Farm. Otherwise, we wouldn't have celebrated the 100th year. Most importantly, we wouldn't have been held the leadership position for both auto and fire for decades. Having said that, I think in the past, the changes which have happened around us has taken the expectations to a new level. Customers are no longer anchoring it to how was State Farm and how is it now today, but versus how do they interact and what are the experiences they get from other companies, and then they relate it to where and how we are creating those experiences. So with that, I think there is, in the past 4 years, definitely a lot of things have changed. I'll try to summarize it in probably 2 or 3 bullets. One is action-oriented. It's not that we got onto the experience journey in the past 4 years. State Farm has been on that journey for a long period of time. Agents have been at the forefront from the time the company has been established and creating those personal relationships with the customers. But these days, the customer expectations, how they interact, has completely changed, which means that we have to adapt and change too. When we had the journey and of the experience, we did measure. We are still measuring what customers tell us. But the biggest thing which we have tried to change and which is changing and we further would want to change is taking actions. Whether it is from the technology teams who have to make changes in the product, specifically on the digital where customers interact directly with State Farm, or the tools and processes which we actually offer to our agents and employees who interact with our customers. So taking actions has been the biggest change. The second thing I would say is getting the data together. I think it was a painful process to collect and aggregate all this data from different sources and then synthesize information out of it and then providing it to our implementation teams or the execution teams or process teams. But what has changed is it's been automated. Doesn't mean that we're completely there. We still have a long ways to go. But it definitely has simplified the process of connecting all the feedback data with some of our operational data sets. That has enabled both the analytics teams and research teams, and also the teams the frontline teams we have where they have to take the actions. The third thing I would say which has changed is the timeliness. Everyone can see the feedback coming in real time. Everyone is waiting, a new feature launches, everyone is tapping their fingers on the desk to see who's the first customer who's going to give that feedback and what is that feedback? Is it good, bad, ugly? And how can we start taking actions on it? So I think that's an example of a tech team which might be watching. It's the same thing with our frontline employees too. When we launch some of these experience-related programs and we send an email to the customer on how the interaction was, and somebody pops in that survey, the feedback, the leader to the whoever has addressed the employees, they're all watching for it, not in the negative sense, but more in terms of how they have interacted with our customers. What is it that they can make it better? So I would say those are some of the key changes which have happened in the experience space over the past 4 years. But I would say that we're just scratching the surface.
Let's just continue the theme a little bit with you, Mahesh, around digital transformation and the implications for customers and employees. You know, it's been a big buzzword pre-pandemic. It's carried on through the pandemic. I've heard people say, you know, we've accelerated this digital transformation program of a decade that we had into 10 months or 10 weeks. I've heard people say that they have completely equipped a virtual contact center in days. What were the implications? What happened at State Farm, and what were the implications of this sudden just avalanche of requirements, of the need to get the digital transformation? We all had aspirations, but everything was compressed. What happened?
Yeah. So before I come to exact points of the answers to what you just asked, Leslie, let me go over some of the background on our journey itself. We started off on the digital transformation journey six years back, and I think it is key to understand what it means for State Farm, because each company has defined a different way of what they mean by digital transformation. And for us, when all the senior executives and starting from our CEO Michael Tipsod, everyone was interviewed, one theme which came up and that became the vision of our digital transformation was differentiating in service and dominating in experience. So the dominating in experience was one of the key things, or the vision which we had to carry the torch on from past 6 years. We think about digital transformation in 6 key areas, and you can imagine it as a pyramid, 3 layers of pyramid. The bottommost layer of the pyramid has technology advancement, data enablement, and self-service. Those form our base of the pyramid because, in my view, I think technology and data are key enablers, and they are going to differentiate us in whatever we do in future and whatever experiences which we need to create to our customers. The middle layer, which leads to simplification of our process and business, how we do business and how customers, agents, and employees interact. And the second part of the middle layer is experience. We started off with customer experience when we started our digital transformation journey, but now we call it the experience excellence because we incorporate customer, employee, and agent experience. And the top of the pyramid lies the overall growth engine. If everything's done right, the growth engine needs to continue. So if you see that way, now I'll just focus on the experience, and then I'll come back to some on the key question of the pandemic and what changed and how we have adapted. On the experience side, I think there are two facets to it. One is the customers interacting directly on our digital properties and interacting with our employees and agents. And the second aspect is the tools, processes, and all the things, training and other things which we provide to our employees and to our agents. The relationship between agents and employees is a little bit different simply because of the agents that are independent contractors. So now you can see the dynamics of all the experience which plays into the picture. So as an example, the two examples I would take probably address the question which you just asked. One is, we call it the modernization program within the broadest umbrella of transformation, where we are overhauling some of our systems, making sure that we are designing and placing the data right in a way that we could capitalize on on the data which we capture. And then the third thing is creating those experiences with all the things which we need to do. So having said that, with the modernization, we changed a billing system. If a billing system gets changed, the bills which gets generated are automatically sent from the system through email or through paper mail to the customers. So now there's a direct interaction with the customers. Customers see the look and feel of the bill. Obviously, the most important thing which catches anyone's eyes is how much I'm paying and why I'm paying for this, and if there is any mismatch. The second thing which plays into the picture is when they call back or when they reach back to us, either through digital or through agents or through the employees. Now the agents should be equipped to make sure that they can answer and they can cater to our customers' needs, and similar to the employees as well. Are we having the billing systems designed in such a way that it meets the customer experience and also our agent experience? All this happened in the midst of when we all went home after the pandemic hit. And the feedback which we got and the implementations which have been done so far, processes which have been changed, it has gone seamless, I would say. And we are just in the journey. And the second example I would say is when everyone was sent home, we had to, from hardware to software to everything, had to be put in place specifically for claims and for our service, because we can't just wait. Right? We can't just say to the customers that, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not equipped, because if somebody is in a claim situation, we want to make sure that we give the best-in-class experience and we take care of our customers. So those are a couple of examples which fall in the realm of our digital transformation journey so far, but I can go on and on.
Oh, it's great. It's fantastic. Great. Laurel, let's just drill a bit down into the way State Farm looks at this whole experience realm, because we have many customers and companies come to us and they'll send us an RFP in the mail and they'll say, we've got a voice of customer program, or we have a voice of employee program. But I think the way that State Farm looks at the world is this network of agent, employee, and customer, and they're all symbiotic and interdependent. So how did you think about that, and what can we talk about to help our customers maybe position their thinking and frame it a little bit in a little bit more of an advanced way to take account of their particular network? Because it's not as simple as start with voice of customer or start with employee, is it?
I think this was the thing when we entered into our relationship with Medallia that I was most excited about, the potentials that we saw. So we have really started to view this as, to your point, not sort of three independent pillars, but I kind of think of them as more, three legs on, the three legs of the three-legged stool, so to speak, right? So we have our customer experience, agent experience, and employee experience programs that we've tried to all begin to link together. And the reason we do this is we really believe, and research supports the fact that the mindset of your employee, the mindset of your agent has a direct link to the experience your customer has. And so we knew that, first of all, we've been over time kind of looking to make that linkage. Our business partners are always asking us, all right, we're seeing our employees talking about this topic, or they're feeling overworked, or they're feeling stressed. Is that impacting my customers or not? And we've always, kind of said, probably. But now, because we've been able to take the data not only about the customer and the experience they had, but information about the employee who delivered that experience, their mindset. How are they feeling about their engagement with the company? How are they feeling about their leadership? How are they feeling about their training? and merge all that together, we've really been able to start to identify some really, really neat trends and some neat patterns and some things that have enabled us to begin to look at those things in the context of actual financial outcomes. So once we've started understanding how these things all relate, you can begin to look at your service level objectives in the call center, right? And understand what should those be? How does the way my employees are staffed impact this experience? How does overtime impact this end game experience? So we've been able to start making some refinements there. What I would say though is, in order to do that, we had to be very, very deliberate up front about the data and about making sure we didn't just create a voice of customer program, create a voice of employee program, and then try to sort of shoehorn those things together. Instead, we've been very deliberate about data tagging, about making sure the questions in our surveys are aligned, so we're asking things in very, very similar ways. We've had to be very deliberate about our sampling strategies to make sure we're not oversampling certain populations of our employees, for example. But in the course of laying out that really, really deliberate framework, what we found is it's really enabled some wonderful analytics that we're just beginning to scratch the surface on.
Right. It's very exciting and it's very powerful. And I think that what we see are companies who, as I said at the beginning, start with one or the other, and then they have themselves have a third leg of the stool. They have a dealer network, for example. They have some kind of distribution channel, or they have some critical supply chain channel. And most people start not thinking that way. The framework is just single-threaded customer or employee. And what we want to do is to get people to think really about sure, you're going to get value from that first experience of feedback, as you were describing, Mahesh. Sure, you'll get value from the first employee feedback. But if we can really tackle the network and get the power that you've achieved, is exponentially more beneficial, I think, and faster for everyone. So fantastic. Mahesh, State Farm's taken a very deliberate approach to omni-channel and journey, end-to-end journey experience. Again, like the network experience that we were talking about with Laurel, this is a different way of looking at the customer experience, and for that matter, the agent-employee experience end-to-end. Talk about some of the challenges and implications of taking that approach.
So Leslie, as I talked about before, there are a lot of good things which we have done, and whenever you do good things, there are more challenges which gets attached to it. So one of the things which I can reflect back 4 years back when we did the commitment with Medallia as well, I think I clearly remembered Laurel and I having this conversation on how do we push this to the organization, the few parts of the organization where we had tested it out, but how do we do this across the organization? And if I see today, the whole conversation was push, and then how do we convert it to a pull mechanism, because we didn't want it to push it, but it needs to be more demand generated. I can confidently raise my hand today and say that we have been successful in doing it. There is more demand in the organization to get this enabled versus how fast we can do it. So it's a good problem to solve, but it's a challenge, and that goes into prioritization, right? That's my number one challenge. And Laurel and I have lots of conversations with our business partners to say, hey, what is it that is the most valuable and what's the most impactful, so that we can prioritize and execute it in that fashion. That's number one. The second biggest challenge, I think Laurel kind of went there, is the sampling. For customers, I think it is more or less okay because we have a good sample size. But when it comes to agents and employees, they're limited set. We have 19,000 plus agents offices, and then we have employees. And that sample size is fixed. And we are doing so many efforts right now, and this goes back into digital transformation and some of the modernization, and we want continuous feedback, and we want to implement. Everyone is waiting, but now it gets into survey fatigue. If I keep asking same people questions regarding different processes and systems and data, other things which we are pushing towards them, we might lose the momentum which we got as well. So it's the challenge of how do we balance it. The third thing I would say is the change which we need to bring with the organization, within the organization, and specifically with the churn which we got, and how do we onboard the employees much faster, train them faster, and also motivate them faster, right? It's in this one, and I don't think this is not a new information. It's a public information that all the companies on the labor market and what we face, and because of the churn which we got, the change sometimes becomes a challenge. Not that it's not accepted across the organization, but it is more about dealing with it, because we put our employees and agents through a lot of change, at least in the transformational journey which we are in today. So I think those are three largest challenges I would say we are facing right now, and some of them are good challenges to face, rather than I need to go or Laurel has to go and sit in front of business partners and explain why it is important. I think that phase we have passed long back.
Well, although it's clear to me that taking this network approach, again, agent, employee, customer, and then taking this omni-channel, journey-focused approach is, I think, transformational for businesses. It's challenging, it's harder to do, but I think the rewards are just immense if the implementation can be executed. And I think you guys at State Farm have done a great job of that. So, but I'm very interested in Keenan. Laurel, what about the future? I love to think about the future in every dimension. You must be thinking about this all the time, the implications of where State Farm sits at the center of a really important network of people's lives and property. The automotive network alone is massive for State Farm. So what's next? What's the future hold?
There's probably two things I'd say we're really focused on. One is we're pretty confident in the approach that we're taking, this customer, agent, employee approach, this omni-channel approach. The question, and I think the thing that looms before us right now that Mahesh and I talk about all the time, is how do we prioritize what's next? How do we start to identify how we can implement what we're doing more broadly across the organization? So we've got really good work going on right now already with our survey platform, getting the experiences of our customers, our agents, and our employees as we continue to modernize, as we continue to transform the organization. We need to understand, are we hitting the mark with all of those constituencies, right? Is everybody benefiting from the transformation the way we think they should be benefiting? The other thing I think we've started in my area is some really interesting, almost self-serve. Medallia's been a great partner, teaching us not only are you building platforms and things for us, but you're teaching us how to self-serve on capabilities ourselves. And we think there's a lot of potential there for our folks just to get better at using the capabilities of the Medallia platform. I'd say the other thing we want to do in the near term is continue to expand just our service recovery efforts, that pushing the voice of the customer down to the individual associate. Today, we have most of our contact centers and claims operations utilizing this capability, but we're continuing to talk about how do we expand this more broadly, potentially into our agency force? How do we allow employees who are serving other employees to see and leverage feedback about the experiences that we're giving there? So that whole service recovery, individual interactions and touch points is something we want to continue to expand. The second thing I'd say is, as we've started to collect, like I said, we've received millions of responses now back from customers and employees and agents. We are finding that we're sitting on a wealth of information. And so I think the second thing that we're really excited about is how do we start to take all of the survey data, the feedback that we collect, marry it in with our operational data, really start looking at mining that, putting some machine learning capabilities out that to start to understand better how all of these things interact. How do these different variables and KPIs really end up impacting our financial outcomes, so we can continue to refine the operation and deliver an awesome experience to all of our customers, agents, and employees.
So not a big job of work on your
Not
hands
at
there,
all,
is it?
not at all.
But you know what's exciting is you're laying the groundwork for the next 100 years.
You
So,
got it. You got it.
Mahesh, Laurel, what a fantastic discussion. I could talk all day. There's so many ideas and so many things to learn from each of you. And thanks for being a great partner of Medallia. That was a great session.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much for having us.